All right, so we are in the Prosecco wine region of Italy with the Maresina Prosecco, DOC. So in Italy, they have two different designations, DOC and DOCG. DOC is good, DOCG is great in theory. It's just like a local, well, it's not local, it's a national thing where locally they go in and basically evaluate the wines and give them different designations, which also means they have to follow whatever like the bylaws are or whatever they're called for the region to be able to get the name of, in this case, Prosecco. Same deal if you want to have, like Burgundy or Village Beaujolais or whatever, they have to follow certain standards. And then in Italy, beyond that, they also have the extra designations, which that might be too much information, but same deal like in France, there's like Beaujolais, Beaujolais Village, and then there's different crus. And then there's Grand Cru and Premier Cru. So what you're getting with this is that it was made the way that Prosecco is supposed to be made to fit the standard, and that it has the extra designation, which is great because it is very inexpensive. And a lot of times what I like to do in the club is just like mix everything so that there is things that will surprise you. And whenever I want to put something in that's like kind of difficult to fit because it's pretty expensive, it's perfect because I'm able to add in something like this to balance it out. So this wine is delicious, and I will say absolutely punches way above the price point that it's at. But it's also, like if Prosecco isn't specifically your thing, everyone still really likes mimosas, and I don't like to like have, whatever the I don't know. I bought so I can't think of what's called. Whatever the really bad one is that you normally buy to. Anyways, I won't even say it because that's not great for anyone. But you're just not putting bad stuff in your body, even if you're mixing it with a Bellini or whatever. But I love it as it is. I think it's so tasty. All right, so with that in mind, we're in the Prosecco region with Maresina. They make a good amount of it, but they still do everything by hand, which is very impressive, considering the amount of wine that they make. And they still get their natural classification by us, which means the whole spontaneous fermentation thing, native yeast, and low sulfur, and either minor. I'm sure they're doing some fining and filtering, but that fits within the levels of no, what's called, isotopes or whatever it is that deacons would not like. Anyways, so I went ahead and put mine in my Zalto just because I didn't have a flute in front of me. If I did, I think I probably would have put it in a flute just because I like the way it makes it easier for me to evaluate the bubbles. I'm actually struggling a little bit with this, but they look very small, which is normally a good thing, though Prosecco is made differently than Champagne. Prosecco is basically or Champagne is made in the bottle by riddling is what it's called, turning it until over time the lees go to the bottom and the carbonation turns into bubbles, versus Prosecco is basically added carbonation to it. Like it goes through a tank and then it goes into the bottle, and that whole process adds carbonation. So that's why they honestly, I feel like, do taste very different. Like traditional style Pet Nat's a totally different thing versus like Champenois or Champenois method versus Pet Nat versus this are all a little bit different. So that's a lot of background. Let's just drink it. Let's just talk about it. On the nose, I would say like the first, I'm mainly getting fruits. So it's like zesty lime on the top, maybe a little bit minerally, like wet gravel on the bottom, more like lemony on the bottom, some apples, like tart apples, but also a little bit of a mix. Like they could like some tart apples, but also maybe like the yellow one that's a little bit sweeter. This one's extra dry, but honestly, I would say that it's drinking more like it's brut. Extra dry, like brut is basically, well, extra brut is like no sugar at all. Brut is like 1 to 2 grams of sugar, which is still incredibly low. Extra dry is like just a little bit more than that. Very funny story of how all of this happened, because at the end of the day, like our tastes as a society are getting more and more dry. So they initially started with, dry and dry. If you drink it today, you would not think it's dry at all. So they had to basically add extra layers to it. So sorry, this is just turning into a history lesson versus a wine lesson, but I love talking about making sparkling wine because I think it's super interesting. All right, so let's try it. It's just perfect Prosecco. Exactly what you think Prosecco is and should taste like. That's what it is. And that's probably why it's getting the designation. It's delicious. It's got a really long mouth, or like lovely like mouthfeel, a little bit frothy. Surprisingly longer finish than I would have expected. Super zesty, like lime really sticks with you. I will just be drinking it as it is because I think it's very tasty. But if I was, it's very inexpensive. So I would also buy this wine, and if I have like a shower for someone, this is exactly what I would do to put out for like a mimosa bar or whatever, because I don't I want to have natural wine still, but I don't want to pay a lot for it if I'm going to be mixing it with stuff. And this is just, it just ticks all those boxes. So I hope you enjoy it. I know it might not be the most fascinating wine you've ever tried, but honestly, sometimes you also get tired of that. Like sometimes you just want to have a Prosecco, or you just want to have like a Malbec that tastes like a Malbec from Mendoza. I had one of those this month too, and it feels great. Like I think that it's important to stay well-rounded. And if you disagree, then that's cool. You can always buy wines by the bottle or whatever. But in the club, I kind of try to make sure that you're experiencing all of those, because you also don't want to kind of lose like your grip on what conventional wine would normally taste like, because I think that you can get really skewed in the natural wine world. Anyways, now I'm on my soapbox. We're not even talking about historical or educational stuff anymore. But I hope you love it. It's very tasty. And yeah, use it for some kind of celebration.